What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the after credit scene. We are talking forecast and predictions for episode 4 of Loki. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so when we drop new content, you'll be the first one to find out about it. Then share this sucker all across the multiverse. Got a lot of predictions here that I'm going all in on for episode 4. So far, really love the pacing of this season, really love the direction of this season, and the writers and the story really keeping you guessing. That has a lot to do with the world building they did last season, but the direction they're going, I think, is really important. We were left with a lot of cliffhangers. We're going to get into it. But first off, I want to remind you, this is always what we start with, always what we're going to talk about. Pay attention to the multiversal rules and the visuals. From the loom to the descriptions down below when they give you what year they're in and that they're in the sacred timeline, then they make some kind of change. And then when they jump to the future, they're in an alternate timeline. They're in a branch timeline. There's a whole bunch of those little clues and hints that I think are going to be important if the story and the show goes the direction I think it's going to go. These things are important now. They're really going to be important later on in movies and other things where Marvel has been kind of preparing you for what's coming and how to really understand what's going on in a quick way without you having to really wrap your mind around some confusing ideas, because this multiverse stuff is going to get really twisty, which is going to be a lot of fun. But if you understand it, especially when people dig into it, I think they're really being careful to cover a lot of potential plot holes and in some of these visuals and these explanations. So I think more matters than you really think. And I think with some of the stories and some of the things we've been presented with so far, there's a lot of things that we're going to go back and revisit, similar to episode 3, where you saw Chicago in 1863, and then you saw it in 1893, and you saw a lot of similarities, some things that could really ground it so you knew you were in the same spot. But visuals and Easter eggs right down to the different statues of Odin, Thor, and then Balder, but not Loki. Things like that I think are really going to matter later on. That's just my take on it. But I think you really need to pay attention to what's going on, what's not going on, what is there, what's not there, and then how they are spoon-feeding you some of these things. The cliffhanger last episode came to fruition with the back and forth between Victor Timely, Renslayer, and Miss Minutes, kind of trying to vie for Victor's attention. Who was telling the truth, whose plan was the one that we're going to go with, all those different things, right down to Ravonna and Miss Minutes getting pushed into He Who Remains Palace at the end of time by Sylvie, and then Miss Minutes saying, I've got a secret, but it's really going to make you angry. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute before we finish, but does that mean there's a new villain on the horizon? I'm only about 60% sure in this. I think last season you had a person that they were trying to get to, the timekeepers. Then there was a twist that there were no timekeepers, that it was actually a person, it was a Kang variant, and that this person, in Sylvie's eyes, was the villain. And this back and forth between who's the bad guy, who's not the bad guy, they kind of play that off at the beginning when Loki is interviewing Hunter X5. But after that, they really get away from that. And you have a lot of these different factions trying to deal with what I think is the main problem, which is the villain of time and the multiverse itself. Trying to stop this event from happening, trying to deal with the repercussions of what happened last season, and people vying for that power. I don't think it really makes them villains, but I think you're going to find out people's motives more so, and you're going to have some people that are more selfish, more self-centered, like Sylvie, who thinks that if you go around and you kill all the Kang variants, that's going to fix it, when in reality, that there are too many of them and too many time periods to go back. There are people that are trying to fix it in different ways. You've already had kind of a big bad in Agent Docs, or Judge Docs, who went through and pruned all of the existing timelines thinking that was going to fix it. It didn't. Things were still going on. And you learned really quick that that's not the answer. So what's going on here, I think, is just going to create new motivation. It's going to reveal Miss Minutes' motivation, because what she has to tell Ravonna may not be true, which is why I'm not very confident that this is a good thing. It may just be Miss Minutes motivating and manipulating Renslayer to do what she wants her to do. But it also, even if it is true, it's going to motivate Ravonna to go do something different. There's a lot of talk about what that could be. We'll get to it over here. But pay attention to that. Either way, I think we're going to start off, we're going to get some of that explanation here in episode 4, and it's going to kind of move us into episode 5 and 6, where I think the real twists are going to occur. Victor in the Loom. When we ended last episode, Mobius and Loki go back to the TVA with Victor Timely so that they can access the door that OB needs to get into to try to fix the loom. I think that there's going to be something that goes on there, but I think these two situations may be connected, where whatever you find out with Miss Minutes and Renslayer is also affecting what's going on here. Whatever she tells them, they may be finding out right here as well, and it may affect how that happens. Or you may find out that OB has some ulterior motive, something else is going on, and you kind of find all that out together, where OB's plan doesn't really go like he thinks it should, or Victor is more manipulative than you think he is, that he takes the opportunity to get the technology that he so desperately needs in this TVA area. Anything could happen here. I think clearly after the end of episode 1, things are worse in the TVA at the end of this season, and we've already seen some of that, but what that looks like and how that happens, I think, is going to really reveal itself here. Here's where I tell you to temper your expectations. There are a lot of things going on. I think we're hoping that the big twist is here, but I don't think it's going to happen that way. Normally, episode 4 of a Marvel series is where I remind you big things are coming, this is where things change, and this is what catapults people into the final couple of episodes, and it brings in new viewers to say, hey, catch up with these first 4 episodes and get ready for the finale. I actually don't think that's going to happen here. I think some of the things that we're going to hear about are that they change the game a little bit, but they're leading us into some bigger twists and some bigger things. I think it's going to ramp up the stakes, but I don't think there's going to be a big twist that just changes the whole series. I think something in episode 5 and 6 really flips all this on its head and leads to something big at the end that has a lot more long-lasting effects than the stuff we're going to find out tomorrow. There's lots of moving parts. People are scattered to the wind. You've got Mobius and Loki in the TVA. You've got OB trying to come up with his own plan there in the temporal loom lab. You've got Ravonna and Miss Minutes at the end of time. You've got Sylvie in her own timeline, but she is contemplating what to do next, and she has He Who Remains Tempad, which means she's going to have a plan of her own as well. Then you have all the other hunters and judges at the TVA that are trying to figure out their own thing, and there's some other plans and some other things at stake there. You've got a whole bunch of moving parts that need to start coming together or need to react to something. And we just had an episode that's building up to something, but nothing to react to yet. And so there's a lot of moving parts. I think that only leads to, one, that we're not going to see everybody, which is why I've got this at an 80%, but 2, that there's a lot of different positions to come at whatever it is that we're missing. Whatever it is that they have not told us yet, that the writers have created, that they're now working backwards from when they wrote the story, that we're now getting all this periphery story that's building towards this big thing. It's going to be interesting to see. I say all this because the multiverse has to open. We already know that Marvel is heading towards Secret Wars. They're heading towards the Kang Dynasty. They're heading towards Kang variants. The multiverse has to open, remain open, and be accessible. So restoring the sacred timeline in a way that we have no access to these other realities, we have no access to these other worlds, and they have no access to us, I just don't see how that's the way this ends unless it's a temporary fix. But I don't think that's going to happen, which is why, again, I say this will not end well. This theory right here is leading us into episodes 5 and 6. You're going to get some kind of explanation after all of this that gets you to these two things. And so there's a lot of things that still have to happen, and there's a lot of things that still have to go wrong that everybody that's dealing with these things is going to end up having to react to. Now, whether this is the way that things were supposed to happen all along because the multiversal war is inevitable, and we've just been watching the inevitability take place, even though everybody thinks, oh, we're trying to figure this out on our own and we're trying to make this not happen. In reality, it was always going to happen. It was always intended to happen, and there was nothing you could do to stop it. That he who remains has already lived through that, and this is just a cycle that is going to continue long after we've passed this point in time. I think that's more plausible. I think some of the stuff you've seen is not on a straight timeline trajectory, but it is multiple levels and multiple pieces that we're going to revisit areas and see that things that we already saw are having to be revisited and dealt with in different ways. Something you saw that you thought was dealt with, a timeline that you saw that didn't really have anything to do with anything, it was just a place that they visited, somehow is now more of a key turning point in time than you really thought before. There's a lot of ways that they can go with this. There's a lot of surprise and a lot of things that they can do with this. I am hopeful for the last 3 episodes of this series that it's going to build towards a really satisfying climactic ending that's gonna leave Marvel fans excited about what's to come and really lead into some other things down the road, as opposed to having some kind of filler episode that doesn't really give us many answers and really just kind of leaves us wanting more and makes critics feel like this was a dud of a show and can just kind of sit over here on its own, that it doesn't have ramifications. I think we're getting further enough into phase 4, 5, and 6 here that they can take some of those risks and say, hey, you really got to go back and watch this because it really enforces what's coming and what has already happened. Curious to know what you guys think. The theories and the comments and the different options that we have out there are endless, and I want to know what you guys think. There's a whole lot of Ravonna Renslayer theories out there that she could be a Kang variant, that she could be the child of He Who Remains, and another version of Ravonna, that Victor Timely could be their child. I don't really think that's what's going to happen, given the romantic tinges that they tried to throw into episode 3 between Ravonna and Victor. I don't think that Ravonna is a Kang variant or a Loki variant, since that's an easy direction to go, and some of that is already in the comics. I think that person is out there. I think that, there are versions of Ravonna that could be Kang variants, because that is in the comic, but Ravonna that we are spending time with, I think there is something else going on there that is going to anger Ravonna in a way that changes her perspective on what needs to happen. That somehow Ravonna becomes the person that no longer wants to protect the TVA and protect the timeline and do her job, even though the timekeepers are gone, and somehow turns her into somebody that is going to come in and want to sabotage these things and somehow align her with Sylvie's reasonings, even though it may not be Ravonna going out and killing Kang variants. It may be, we're just going to destroy the TVA. I think that's more the direction that it goes, but how that happens, what the secret is, I think is going to be a little more, it's going to be different. Also, because Michael Waldron has already said in an interview, he's acknowledged that there are Ravonna versions that are Kang variants, similar to Loki having a female variant. I think him acknowledging that in an interview means that that's not the thing that's going to happen. I could be wrong. He could have thrown it out there as a misdirection, but I think it's something else that people aren't expecting that's going to subvert expectations and really keep people glued to this story. And I also don't think that revelation is going to make Ravonna angry enough to do anything. It'll be interesting to see. I'm curious what you guys think. Add your comments below the description. Like, share, subscribe, share this across the multiverse, and then check out some of our other videos over here. We got a lot of things you can sink your teeth into, including a video explaining the multiverse definitively And as always, guys, when the next one drops, we'll catch you right back here. Later.